everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Daily English Conversations. I'm Sophia, and today we're diving into a topic that's as powerful as it is transformative: forgiveness. And joining me, as always, is my thoughtful and insightful co-host, Mason. Hi, Mason.
Hey, Sophia. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited about today's conversation. Forgiveness is one of those topics that touches every aspect of our lives, and yet, it's something we often struggle with.
Absolutely, Mason. Forgiveness is not just about saying, "I forgive you." It's a process, a journey even. And today, we're going to explore that journey together, breaking it down so it's easier to understand and apply in real life.
That's right, Sophia. We'll be discussing what forgiveness really means, why it's important, and how it can impact our relationships and personal growth. We'll also highlight key phrases and vocabulary that are crucial for expressing forgiveness in English.
So, let's start by asking a simple question. What is forgiveness? Mason, when you hear the word forgiveness, what comes to mind?
Well, forgiveness to me means letting go of resentment or anger towards someone who has wronged you. It's about choosing to release those negative emotions so that you can move forward, even if what happened was hurtful.
That's a great way to put it. Forgiveness is really about letting go. And that's an important phrase to remember: letting go. When we forgive, we're not saying that what the other person did was okay, but we're choosing to let go of the negative feelings that are holding us back.
Exactly, Sophia. It's more about freeing yourself from the burden of anger and bitterness, and sometimes that's the hardest part.
Let's dive a little deeper into the vocabulary we're using here. Letting go means releasing or setting something free, often an emotion, like anger or resentment. It's an important phrase in the context of forgiveness because it highlights that forgiveness is an active choice, not a passive one.
And when we talk about resentment, we're referring to that lingering anger or bitterness we feel when we believe we've been treated unfairly. Resentment can really weigh you down, both emotionally and mentally.
That's so true. Resentment is one of those emotions that can grow over time if we don't address it. And that's where forgiveness comes in. It's almost like an emotional detox, clearing out those feelings so we can live more freely and peacefully.
You know, Sophia, it's interesting because many people think that forgiveness is something we do for others. But in reality, it's more about helping ourselves heal.
Exactly, Mason. Forgiveness is as much a gift to ourselves as it is to the person we're forgiving. It allows us to move forward without the baggage of past hurts. And that brings us to another important word: healing. Forgiveness and healing go hand in hand. When we forgive, we start to heal emotionally.
And healing isn't always easy. It takes time, and it requires us to be honest with ourselves about how we're feeling. But the result is worth it: living a life that isn't controlled by past pain.
That's a beautiful way to look at it, Mason. I think one of the reasons forgiveness is so powerful is because it allows us to take back control of our emotions and our lives. We are no longer victims of what happened. We become empowered to choose how we respond to it.
Absolutely, Sophia. And for our listeners, this idea of empowerment is really key. When we forgive, we're not just letting go of negative emotions, we're also reclaiming our own sense of peace and strength.
So true, Mason. And for those of you listening, we want you to really think about these words: letting go, resentment, healing, and empowerment. These are all part of the vocabulary of forgiveness, and they're crucial for understanding how to navigate this process. Now, we talked about what forgiveness is and why it's so important. We're going to take it a step further by looking at some real-life situations where forgiveness plays a crucial role. And as always, Mason is here with me to explore these ideas.
Forgiveness isn't just a concept. It's something we experience in our daily lives, in our relationships, and even in our interactions with strangers.
Exactly, Mason. So let's start with a common scenario that many of us have faced: an argument with a close friend. Imagine this: you had a disagreement with your best friend, and harsh words were exchanged. Now, there's this lingering tension between you two. What do you do?
That's a tough situation, Sophia. When emotions are high, it can be really difficult to step back and think about forgiveness. But this is exactly where forgiveness can have the most impact. Instead of holding onto that resentment, remember, resentment is that lingering anger or bitterness we can choose to let go and start healing.
Right, Mason. And let's focus on those key phrases: resentment and letting go. Resentment can build up if we don't address it, and it can damage even the strongest relationships. But by letting go of that anger, we open the door to healing and mending the relationship.
That's so true, Sophia. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about choosing not to let that anger control you or your actions.
And when you forgive a friend, it's not just about saying, "I forgive you." It's about understanding their perspective, acknowledging your own feelings, and then making a conscious decision to move past the conflict. It's a process, one that involves both the heart and the mind.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important phrase: move past the conflict. This means deciding not to dwell on the disagreement or let it continue to affect your relationship. It's about focusing on the positive aspects of your friendship and working together to rebuild trust.
And rebuilding trust is crucial. Forgiveness doesn't always happen instantly. It can take time, especially when the hurt runs deep. But each step towards forgiveness is a step towards healing. And healing, as we mentioned earlier, is not just about feeling better, it's about restoring the relationship to a place of peace and understanding.
You know, Sophia, I think it's also important to mention self-forgiveness. Sometimes we're hardest on ourselves. If we've made a mistake, it can be difficult to forgive ourselves and move on. But self-forgiveness is just as important as forgiving others.
Absolutely, Mason. Self-forgiveness is about recognizing that we're human, we all make mistakes. It's about learning from those mistakes and not letting them define us. So, for our listeners, if you're struggling to forgive yourself for something, remember that forgiveness is about growth, not perfection.
That's a great point, Sophia. And for our audience, here's another key phrase: self-forgiveness. This means acknowledging your mistakes, learning from them, and then allowing yourself to move forward without carrying guilt or shame. It's an essential part of personal growth.
So true, Mason. And speaking of personal growth, let's talk about forgiveness in the context of family relationships. Family dynamics can be complicated, and sometimes the people we're closest to can hurt us the most. But forgiveness in these situations can be incredibly powerful. It can bring families closer together and create a stronger bond.
Yes, family relationships are often the most challenging when it comes to forgiveness. There's so much history and emotion involved. But when you forgive a family member, it can be a way of acknowledging that your relationship is more important than the conflict. It's about valuing that connection and wanting to preserve it.
And let's focus on the word connection here. Forgiveness helps to reconnect us with our loved ones. When we forgive, we're saying that our relationship is worth more than the hurt we've experienced. It's a way of strengthening those family ties.
Exactly, Sophia. And this doesn't mean that forgiveness is easy, especially in families. It can be a long process, and it might require some difficult conversations. But in the end, forgiveness can lead to deeper understanding and stronger relationships.
That's right, Mason. And for our listeners, remember that forgiveness doesn't mean you have to forget what happened or ignore your feelings. It's about finding a way to move forward that honors both your emotions and your relationships.
And that brings us to another important word: honor. When we forgive, we're honoring our own feelings, as well as the relationship. It's about finding balance and moving forward in a way that feels right for both parties.
Well said, Mason. Forgiveness is indeed a balancing act between our emotions, our needs, and our relationships. And that's why it's such a powerful tool for personal and emotional growth.
Exactly, Sophia. And as we wrap up this segment, I want to encourage our listeners to reflect on the role of forgiveness in their own lives. Whether it's forgiving a friend, a family member, or even yourself, think about how forgiveness can help you heal and grow.
Now, let's delve into how forgiveness affects our well-being and mental health. Mason, this is a topic that I think many people underestimate. Don't you agree?
Absolutely, Sophia. Forgiveness isn't just about resolving conflicts with others, it's about finding peace within ourselves. When we hold on to anger, resentment, or grudges, it can weigh heavily on our mental and emotional health. It's like carrying around an invisible burden that affects every part of our lives.
That's such a powerful image, Mason carrying an invisible burden. Let's focus on that phrase for a moment. Invisible burden. It's the emotional weight we carry when we don't forgive, and it can manifest in many ways, like stress, anxiety, or even physical symptoms like headaches or fatigue.
Exactly, Sophia. That's why forgiveness is so important for our overall well-being. By letting go of that burden, we free ourselves from the negative emotions that can hold us back. This isn't just about feeling better, it's about healing on a deeper level, both mentally and physically.
And when we talk about healing, we're not just talking about the absence of pain or anger. Healing is a process, one that involves understanding, acceptance, and ultimately growth. It's about becoming a stronger, more resilient person through the act of forgiveness.
That's a great point, Sophia. Healing is indeed a process, and it often starts with self-awareness. We need to recognize our own feelings and understand how holding on to negative emotions is affecting us. Only then can we begin the process of letting go and moving forward.
And let's emphasize that self-awareness. It's the ability to understand our own emotions, to see how they're impacting our thoughts and behaviors. When we're self-aware, we can make conscious choices about how to respond to those emotions, rather than being controlled by them.
Right, Sophia. And another key phrase here is conscious choices. Forgiveness isn't something that happens by accident. It's a deliberate decision we make to free ourselves from negative emotions. It's a choice to focus on our well-being rather than our anger or pain.
Exactly, Mason. And making that choice can have profound effects on our mental health. Research has shown that people who practice forgiveness experience lower levels of stress, anxiety, and depression. They also tend to have stronger relationships and a more positive outlook on life.
That's true, Sophia. When we forgive, we're not just letting go of negative emotions, we're also creating space for positive ones, like peace, joy, and love. And these positive emotions can have a ripple effect, improving not just our mental health, but our physical health as well.
That's such an important point, Mason. Forgiveness can lead to lower blood pressure, better sleep, and even a stronger immune system. It's amazing how interconnected our mind and body are, and how something as simple as forgiveness can have such wide-reaching benefits.
Absolutely, Sophia. And for our listeners, if you're struggling with forgiveness, remember that it's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's okay to take your time. But every step you take toward forgiveness is a step toward better mental and physical health.
That's right, Mason. Forgiveness is a journey, a process of healing that requires patience, understanding, and self-compassion. And self-compassion is another key phrase here. It means being kind to ourselves, especially when we're going through something difficult, like forgiving someone who's hurt us.
Yes, self-compassion is so important. We often focus on forgiving others, but we also need to forgive ourselves for any mistakes or shortcomings. It's about recognizing that we're all human, and that we all deserve to treat ourselves with kindness and respect.
That's a beautiful message, Mason, and I think it's a perfect note to end this segment on. Forgiveness isn't just about others, it's also about healing ourselves, both emotionally and physically. And it all starts with self-awareness, conscious choices, and self-compassion.
Well said, Sophia. And for our listeners, we hope this conversation has inspired you to think more deeply about the role of forgiveness in your own life. Whether it's forgiving someone else or yourself, remember that forgiveness is a powerful tool for healing and growth.
Now, let's talk about how we can actually put forgiveness into practice in our everyday lives.
Absolutely, Sophia. Understanding forgiveness is one thing, but applying it in real life can be challenging. So, let's dive into some practical strategies that can help our listeners start their journey of forgiveness. The first strategy I want to highlight is acknowledging your feelings. It's important to recognize and accept how you feel before you can begin to forgive.
Yes, acknowledging your feelings is crucial. Let's break that down. To acknowledge means to recognize or admit something. So, when we talk about acknowledging your feelings, we mean being honest with yourself about how you feel, whether it's hurt, anger, or sadness. This is the first step in the forgiveness process because it allows you to face your emotions head-on.
Exactly, Sophia. And it's important to remember that acknowledging your feelings doesn't mean you're giving into them. It's about understanding what's going on inside you, so you can start to work through those emotions. Once you've acknowledged your feelings, the next step is empathy.
Empathy is such a powerful concept. Mason, to have empathy means to understand and share the feelings of another person. When we practice empathy, we try to put ourselves in the other person's shoes to see things from their perspective. This can be incredibly helpful when it comes to forgiveness, because it allows us to see beyond our own hurt and understand why the other person might have acted the way they did.
That's right, Sophia. Practicing empathy can help us let go of anger and resentment, which are often barriers to forgiveness. It's about recognizing that everyone makes mistakes, and that sometimes those mistakes aren't intentional. By seeing the situation from the other person's point of view, we can begin to release those negative feelings.
Another important strategy is letting go. This is perhaps the hardest part of forgiveness, but it's also the most liberating. To let go means to release your grip on something, in this case, the anger or pain you're holding onto. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting what happened or excusing the other person's behavior. It means choosing not to let it control your life anymore.
Yes, letting go is essential. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional weight of the past. And as we mentioned earlier, this can lead to better mental and physical health. But remember, letting go is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's okay to take small steps and to be patient with yourself as you work through it.
And that brings us to the concept of self-forgiveness. This is something we touched on earlier, but it's worth repeating because it's so important. Self-forgiveness means forgiving yourself for mistakes or shortcomings. Often, we're our own harshest critics, and we hold ourselves to unrealistic standards. Learning to forgive ourselves is a crucial part of healing and moving forward.
Absolutely, Sophia. Self-forgiveness is about recognizing that we're all human, and we all make mistakes. It's about letting go of self-blame and accepting that we're doing the best we can. When we forgive ourselves, we open the door to personal growth and self-compassion.
And let's not forget the power of communication in the forgiveness process. Sometimes, having an open and honest conversation with the person who hurt us can be incredibly healing. It allows us to express our feelings, clear up misunderstandings, and start the process of rebuilding trust. Of course, this isn't always possible or appropriate, but when it is, communication can be a powerful tool for forgiveness.
That's a great point, Sophia. Communication can help us understand each other better and resolve conflicts. It's about expressing how we feel in a calm and respectful way, and being willing to listen to the other person's perspective. But as you said, it's not always possible. And that's okay too. Forgiveness is ultimately something we do for ourselves, whether or not the other person is involved.
Exactly, Mason. And that leads us to the final strategy I want to mention: practice gratitude. When we focus on the positive aspects of our lives, the things we're grateful for, it can help shift our perspective away from the negative emotions we might be holding onto. Gratitude can be a powerful antidote to anger and resentment, helping us find peace and contentment in the present moment.
That's so true, Sophia. Practicing gratitude can help us appreciate the good things in our lives, even in the midst of challenges. It's about recognizing that there's always something to be thankful for, and that focusing on those things can help us move past the pain and towards forgiveness.
So, to sum up, the journey of forgiveness involves several key strategies: acknowledging your feelings, practicing empathy, letting go, self-forgiveness, communication, and gratitude. Each of these steps can help you move towards a place of healing and peace, both mentally and physically.
That's right, Sophia. And for our listeners, remember that forgiveness is a personal journey. It's okay to take your time and to be gentle with yourself as you work through it. The most important thing is to keep moving forward, one step at a time.
Thank you, Mason, for this insightful conversation. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey of exploring the power of forgiveness. We hope you've found this discussion helpful and that it inspires you to practice forgiveness in your own life.
It's been a pleasure, Sophia. And to our listeners, we encourage you to start small. Begin with acknowledging your feelings and take it one step at a time. Remember, forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, and it has the power to transform your life.
Absolutely, Mason. And with that, we'll wrap up today's episode. We hope you'll continue to join us for more discussions on important topics like this one. Until next time, take care and be kind to yourselves.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care.